the order inflows that you've seen through the course of the quarter, and perhaps some orders that you're working on at the moment that could have some potential impact going in?
Yeah, so in terms of the order book, we have an order book of about 175 crores at this point in time. In the quarter, we had a bunch of run rate orders that were culminated on our side, and we expect that many of similar and other contracts that we've been pursuing for a long time, some of them will culminate in this quarter as well that is currently running. And therefore, there should be augmentation to the order book at this point in time. And that augmentation will both, part of it get executed and part of it will reflect in the year-end numbers as well.
Right. Of course, your main product being drones. Can you perhaps give us more color on the kind of order book that you have at the moment? Where are these orders coming from? Are there sub-segments on which you're working with?
So typically our order book comes from two broad areas, which is defense and civil. And we have a robust pipeline on both defense and civil side. And typically we see that run rate businesses close both from defense and civil customers, but usually very large projects close with the defense guys.
All right. And based on the kind of expectations that you have with the Defense Ministry outlay, can you give us an idea about what your expectation is as far as FY25 is concerned with orders coming through? Also, if you could give us a little bit of color, if you are in fact working on your export markets, if there are any exports that you are making through, if you could tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, we do expect the momentum of procurement that the country has initiated with respect to drones to continue in the coming year as well, because the base at which we are is very low and we have a very, very large headroom to catch up to our neighbors as well as global powers. In terms of the exports market, we've set ourselves well in the US. We have now been able to ship our systems there. We've started doing demonstrations to end customers and our value-added resellers. So that journey of building a sales pipeline there is something that we are quite excited about, and progressively over the next few months, we will see a pipeline build up as well as hopefully we will have a lot of conversions from that pipeline in the next year.
In terms of your mix, I am looking at about 93%, which is defense that you've already made a point of, and civil stands at around 7%. Any chance that your civil side of orders would perhaps broaden? I understand that you already are inundated with a lot of your defense orders. What's the way forward as far as the civil segment is concerned?
No, even in the civil segment, I think we are seeing good demand. The demand is growing, albeit the base of that demand, particularly with respect to capital procurement and defense, is relatively lower at this point in time, but it is going to catch up with a very large demand coming up because of the kind of geopolitical environment we have internally as well. So we are seeing that demand is building up, and there are opportunities we are pursuing and tracking from the long term.
Right, Ankit, could you give us an idea about the kind of clientele that you have when it comes to the civil segment?
Yeah, so typically the kind of customers we have are all the CAPFs that we have, Central Armed Police Forces. Then we have clients in terms of the law enforcement agencies in various states. And then we have customers in the form of various government departments, or we also have industrial entities or service providers who look at our drones to deliver on various applications around mapping and surveillance at this point in time. Right. And like I mentioned in our presentation, we are also looking at increasingly exploring the opportunity of doing inspections with our drones.
Okay, and my next question, perhaps this is the final one. Is there a difference between operating margins in your civil and defense segment?
No, as such, it does not pan out in that kind of an order.
Okay, and a final word, if you could give us an idea on perhaps what kind of revenues are you looking at when it comes to FY25? And I understand if you can't give us an exact guidance, but some sort of a ballpark number or a figure or a growth-wise, estimate, if you could just leave us with something like that.
At this point in time, I will only be able to comment on it in the next call, perhaps.
Okay, fair enough. We leave it at that, Ankit. Thank you so much for joining us and taking us through the quarter's earnings as well as what we can possibly expect from your company. We're looking at strong numbers, as I've already mentioned. Well, thanks for joining in. And on that note, it's time to slip into a short break, but don't go anywhere. On the other side, we talk about stocks and a lot more. Stay tuned in. Welcome back. You're watching Large Trades, and we now shift focus to how things are faring as far as markets go. And, well, at least as far as the Nifty is concerned, it is advancing by around 0.7%. Well, trying to move towards back towards the mark of 22,000. But as I've mentioned earlier, there is a lot of resistance there, not only in the cash markets, but also in terms of your options and the way things are panning out, because there is a significant amount of open interest building up around the 22,000 call. That said, we're still seeing advances, and the truth is that it's going to be a really hard one to call whether or not we can, in fact, see and expect the Nifty to move above 22,000 through the course of the next couple of days, Thursday being this weekly options expiry. As far as the Bank Nifty is concerned, that's down marginally. The Bank Nifty is down by around 0.3%. But funnily enough, the Fin Nifty, on the other hand, which does have a lot of constituents of the Bank Nifty, is marginally in the green. And as I was mentioning earlier, this is largely on account of your Bajaj Fin Twins, which are also advancing in today's day of trade, which is why we have seen the Fin Nifty remain largely flattish, marginally in the red at the moment. Well, the question really is that, how are things faring in the broader markets? And what are those stocks which are, in fact, doing well in the broader markets? So, at least as far as the mid-cap and the small-cap indices are concerned, as usual, we are seeing gains coming through. And a lot of these gains are today on account of something like a Yes Bank. Up around 10.3%, we understand that HDFC Bank has gotten approval from the Reserve Bank of India, or rather HDFC Bank Group, has got that approval to, well, increase stake in Yes Bank. We have Oil India, which is up around 6.9%. Petronet LNG is up around 6.2% as well. A lot of oil and gas companies, in fact, are doing well in today's day of trade. HPCL is also the other one, which is up and about by around 5.5%. So we continue to keep an eye on that one. Of course, Fortis Healthcare also advancing by around 6%. And on the losing end, we don't have too much to speak for. PB Fintech is under pressure. At the moment, it's down 5.8%. And we have weakness in Crompton Greaves. That's down around 4.6%. And Devyani International also down around 3.2%. Devyani International, of course, is, while it has seen a real reasonable amount of growth, it's the kind of growth that we're seeing in the company is not close to the kind of valuations it is trading at the moment. Well, we'll continue to keep an eye on that one. But let's move on and talk about all the large trades that we want to address in today's day of trade. Tata Chemicals, of course, is because of the earnings coming through. And we've had a curious move in Tata Chemicals as well. Let's get in my colleague Varsha to tell us a little more about Tata Chemicals. Varsha, good afternoon. After seeing substantial weakness early in trade, we've seen recovery of sorts for this particular counter. Give us context here. What's going on?
So, hi Agam. So, right, as you rightly said, so we saw almost stock dipping around 4.4% in early trade today. But it did recover. Now, this is on the back of, despite company posting weak results. So, if you see, the impact on revenue was due to lower volume in soda ash and pricing pressure across various regions. Now, EBITDA, we saw impact on EBITDA due to, again, pricing pressure across the markets. If you see, a company did reduce its gross debt, which is at almost 5,900 crores. And important thing is, US volume was lower by almost 80,000 metric ton. Now, this was due to plant shutdown and cartridge shortage, which led to lower absorption and increase in fixed cost during the quarter. Rallis, which is one of their subsidiaries, the domestic business in Rallis saw volume and margin improvement, but international business, we see some challenges going there. Also, if you see, container and flat glass sector significantly impacted in Europe. Also, Latin America is also experiencing a slowdown, especially lithium. So, overall, if you see, Agam, poor set of results, but we saw recovery in the stock.
Enough, Varsha. And of course, it's certainly been a very curious moment as far as Tata Chemicals is concerned. But let's talk about Suven as well. Suven Pharma is the one where it has been under pressure today. Okay, so that's Suven Life. We want to address Suven Pharma in two different companies. But Varsha, can you tell us a little more about what's happening here?
So, if you see, Suven was down almost 10% in early trade today, but it did recover, and it's almost 6% down now. Now, again, a company did post weak set of results. Now, if you see the reasons, first is, now this is the first result after the new management. Now, if you see, industry-wide inventory destocking in specialty chemicals and impact on a COVID molecule in CDMO did affect revenues and margins for the company. Business excluding the COVID molecule in 9 months is a positive around 2%. But if you see, COVID revenues in FY22 was almost 120 crore. And company did make a one-time investment inventory provision of about almost 13 crore. Now, as per the management, next few quarters would be the next quarter's performance would be soft. Now, this is as per the management. Also, if you see, one risk that I see in this company is their molecule concentration. So there's molecule concentration. So a lot of cash flows, if you see, comes from molecule which will go off patent, and this can affect margins going forward. So this is one risk that I see in Suven Pharma. If you see, the margins of Suven Pharma is almost 40%. Currently in December 23 is almost 30%. Now, maybe this is one of the reasons that drugs going off patent is affecting margins, and it can affect margins going further also.
Right. Varsha, some valuable insights coming in. Thank you so much for getting us those as far as Suven Pharma is concerned. And it's critical, isn't it? It's also come off, in fact, from its, at least 52-week high, and it's currently under pressure, down by around 6.5%. As Varsha already mentioned, at one point in time it was down nearly 10%. It's recovered, but still well in the red. Want to very quickly address what's happening with Chambal Fertilizers, because I believe we have earnings there, and we've seen a sudden spurt in that stock, which has now advanced by around 2.8%. Their net profit has risen over, I would say, about 43% on a year-on-year basis. We're seeing revenues come in at around 4,348 crores. But remember that there's been a sharp decline in revenues. On the other hand, when it comes to margins have in fact seen a sharp up move, because of which we've seen that 42% growth in your profitability. At the end of the day, it's not so much about the revenues as much as it's about the bottom line, isn't it? And that's potentially the reason why we saw a sharp spike in volumes. And by volumes, I mean volumes for the shares of Chambal Fertilizers in the last 10 odd minutes. And that also explains that strength which is returning to this particular counter. It's not too far away from its 52-week high. In fact, its 52-week high is somewhere around 400 rupees per share, which it had managed to gain about a month ago. And nearly a month ago, it was back in first week of January. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that one. Profitability is what matters, and that's where Chambal Fertilizers has shown up. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that one. But from there on, we move on to the other large trade that we wanted to talk about, and that's Rolex Rings. Now, this one has seen a little bit of correction in today's day of trade. But remember, Rolex Ring is also one of those counters which has had a very, very strong year. Let's find out as to what's really happened here. Let's get in Mihika to tell us a little more about that. Mihika.
Yes, so the stock did go to an intraday low of 7.78%, but in the 1 month period it has showed strength. It's up about 15%. The volumes were 6.5 times the 30-day average, and there were more buyers than sellers actually, and the total volumes were at 1.55 lakhs. The major trigger was their Q3 earnings and investor presentation that did come out yesterday, where revenues were down 11% year on year, and margins did contract by around 300 basis points, and the net profit was also down 30%. What actually went wrong is that the Indian bearing ring market segment saw headwinds, and the expected performance was much lower than expected. There was lower offtake from a major domestic bearing customer of the company, which had faced up inventory pile-up issues, and the top 3 bearing customers as well were facing a domestic slowdown, which led to the deferral of certain orders and plants being commissioned by the company. And US, as the company is also involved in exports, the US market was also facing demand slowdown. However, the near-term outlook and for Q4 as well is positive. The company does expect healthy auto component demand traction in both the domestic and the export segments. It also guides a 15 to 18% revenue growth in FY25, and this will be majorly driven by a 20% year-on-year revenue growth in the auto component segment of the company. Furthermore, the company has commissioned an 11.5 megawatt ground solar unit, which is expected to contribute and help it improve the margins in Q4. They also have some key European customers that they do expect a ramp up in the next 6 months to take place. The only key monitorable are the Red Sea disruptions that are going on with the Red Sea crisis right now, as 55% of the company's 9-month FY24 revenue mix were from the export segment of the company.
Yeah, and exports are certainly going to matter as much for Rolex Rings, which continues to be under pressure at the moment. Mihika, thank you for getting us those updates and insights as far as Rolex Rings is concerned. And buzzing on volumes, looking at weakness of around nearly 5% as we speak. From there on, we move on to the final buzzer that we wanted to talk about, and that's Triveni Turbines. In today's day of trade, we have seen the stock jump, it's about 18-19% as we speak. Is it going to hit an upper circuit? That's a wait and watch, but Anushi is going to get us more details on what's going on behind the scene. Anushi.
So quite some strong volumes in this counter, if you see, with the volumes buzzing at about 22 times its 30-day average now, and the stock now crossing its intraday high with about a 18 to 19% gain over the day. Now this was on the back of the strong Q3 FY24 results, wherein both the revenue, PAT and the EBITDA, all three of these measures beat market expectations. with the revenue seeing about a 33% growth. The same for EBITDA as well. The EBITDA also saw about a 33% uptick, whereas the net profit registered about a 30% uptick to rupees 68 crore compared to 53 crores it had made last year. However, the margins continue to remain flat in the quarter with about at 19.4%. So again, some strong numbers over here, but I want to shift your focus to the order book status that the company had, with the order booking rising up to 27% at rupees 1,443 crore in the 9-month period compared to 1,100 crore last year. Again, if you look at the order book, the main growth that we see is coming from the export side, which has seen about a 60% growth at rupees 760 crore. And with this, the management also expects, if this sustains, the growth in the exports will lead to improvement in margins going forward. So definitely watch out on this one. So with the new orders in place, the total order book stood at about 1,575 crore, again registering about a 28% growth. So all these factors do somehow make up for the strong volumes that we are seeing in the counter. So definitely a watch out on this.
Absolutely, absolutely, Anushi. Thank you so much for getting us those updates there. Well, the key takeaway from what Anushi was telling us about is the fact that the contribution from exports has increased substantially, now gone well over the 50% mark. It's led to an improvement in margins as well, and of course the prospects going forward look certainly much, much better as compared to what Triveni Turbine has been used to. And we all know that Triveni Turbine has had its own share of volatility over the last few years. That said, we continue to keep an eye on that one, but we shift focus now to the political scene. Well, we have Prime Minister Modi, who has kicked off the poll campaign and is confident that the NDA will surpass the 400-seat mark in the upcoming polls. While speaking in the parliament at the motion of thanks to the president's address, hear out what he had to say.
मैंने लाल किले से कहा था और राम मंदिर प्राण प्रतिष्ठा के समय भी मैंने उसको दोहराया था। मैंने कहा था देश को अगले 1000 वर्षों तक समृद्ध और सिद्धि के शिखर पर देखना चाहिए। तीसरा कार्यकाल अगले 1000 वर्षों के लिए एक मजबूत नींव रखने का कार्यकाल होगा। कांग्रेस का विश्वास हमेशा सिर्फ एक परिवार पर रहा है। एक परिवार के आगे वो न कुछ सोच सकते हैं, न कुछ देख सकते हैं। कुछ दिन पहले भानुमति का कुनबा जोड़ा लेकिन फिर एकला चलो रे करने लग गए। कांग्रेस के लोगों ने नया नया मोटर मैकेनिक का काम सीखा है और इसलिए अलाइनमेंट क्या होता है उसका ज्ञान तो हो गया होगा, लेकिन मैं देख रहा हूं अलायंस का ही अलाइनमेंट बिगड़ गया। इनको अपने इस कुनबे में अगर एक दूसरे पर विश्वास नहीं है तो ये लोग देश पर विश्वास कैसे करेंगे?
And with that, we're completely out of time on the show, but don't go anywhere. On the other side, we get you India markets close. Stay tuned to NDTV Profit.